Hey, Capt Ron here again with First Officer Dieter for another edition of our weekly Fearless Flight Live Facebook show. Glad to have you. Glad you could join us. And tonight we got, well, I guess I always say we got some interesting news. Maybe that's a little arrogance on my part. I hope you find it interesting. So anyway, Dieter and I've been talking and we've been working and promising. I don't even know if we've done a good job kind of prepping you for it, but we've got a new launch for the website coming up, and the anchor to that is going to be our new flap survey. So tonight we're gonna start out by looking at that, and then we got a little bit of a discussion about local news. I was on the local NBC affiliate here this morning. Like I needed that because I had to go get my remaining eye cataract taken care of. So if I do a lot of winking and stuff like that, it's probably because it's irritating me. But anyway, but the good news is the other one is up and running. So if anybody out there is contemplating having cataract surgery and a little bit squeamish about it, trust me, I've always worn, didn't even wear contacts in my life because I'm so squeamish about that. But this has been amazing. I am just amazing at technology. So it goes along with the airplanes and the safety and all that. So anyway, and Dieter, you've been having your dad, mom visit from, yeah, and your mom and dad are going to be extended visitors.
Well, I mean, if anybody who's watching right now who's live, how would let's say you are scheduled to fly on tomorrow, let's just say, and then you get a text message from your carrier that says, sorry, there is an irregularity and we will have to rebook you. Please contact us. So that was the message that my mom got in her app from the Austrian Airlines app. And it's actually the Lufthansa pilots and flight attendants in Germany who are on strike right now. And so she got this message that said there is an irregularity and please contact the airline. So if you want to put it in chat, what if that happened to you? Would that, heighten your anxiety?
Yeah.
Would you
Yeah.
feel actually relieved you don't have to fly? Let us know.
And what would your expectations be regarding when do you think, how would they rebook you, or when do you think you'd get out? And a question for Dieter is, so they bought their ticket on Austrian Air, was it? But they were actually flying on Lufthansa, right? Because
it's all Star Alliance, right? So
exactly, yeah. Which is also American and British, I think, they're all in there. So
anyway, the good news is because they couldn't fly on Lufthansa, now they're flying on Air Canada to Vienna and then from Vienna to Graz. So because Air Canada is also Star Alliance. So but yeah, it's for my mom and dad who don't fly a whole lot, that was quite anxiety producing. What does it mean we're not going home tomorrow?
Right. Yeah. And it's not like it's not like they have flights leaving every hour or anything like that either. So
no, not at all. And you know what? Here's the big thing that I don't know if that would ever capture anybody going to Europe, but so we talked to a chat agent on her app, on the Austrian app. And the strangest thing is that the first option that my mom got was actually flying to Vienna, but then taking a train to Graz rather than flying. And at first glance, we didn't even capture that because in your mind, you're thinking, well, I'm flying from here to there to here. There's no train involved in this whole thing. But the 3-digit booking code for the city Graz is GRC, but for the for the train station, it's GGZ. So, but it's just one letter. And if you don't pay attention and you say yes, then when you get to your destination, you might actually realize, oh my God, I'm not flying, I'm going on a train. So that was a bit challenging
Yeah.
to navigate, right? If you're not
Yeah.
flying a whole lot.
And
Um,
hearing you say that reminds me, I was reading about 3 weeks ago, and South Bend is a city in Indiana, and
mhm.
they no longer have even a commuter flight between there and O'Hare. But
Really?
American, they used to. So people were American passengers, and they got information with all the information stuff like that, and they got to the airport, and it was a bus. It takes about an hour and a half from South Bend to drive along Lake Michigan
Yeah,
up to
yeah.
there, and they didn't know it. And then when they called up, said, "Hey, what's the deal? This is a
Mhm.
bus." They said, "Oh yeah, we've been doing that." So and apparently that's not the only place that does it. So they book it just like an airline flight,
Yeah.
and in mixed emotions. Some people said, "Oh, it's great. It doesn't matter. I get
Well,
to
I
sit there
mean, to
and
be
relax."
honest, the
Yeah,
first option did get them there 2 hours earlier than the
yeah,
first scheduled flight that would be leaving from Vienna to Graz. So,
yeah,
I mean, if the 2 hours matter to you,
yeah,
that's one thing. But I think most people might not even catch that.
yeah.
Yeah, well, this is I want to end
Exactly.
up at this town. So anyway, it's just one
Yeah.
of those things that
Yeah, it's about expectations
yeah,
and
for
setting
sure.
expectations there. So okay, so we're going to start off with a couple of poll or a few poll questions here. We want to gather your information and we'll talk about it later. So first thing, let's talk about triggers. What's a trigger? It's something that activates your fight or flight system, your amygdala. So what gets you? You get triggered before the flight, boarding, door closing, takeoff, turbulence, or being stuck, or thinking about being stuck on the airplane. So if you're watching us live, or if you're watching the replay, just put that in the chat down there. A, B, C, D, E. You can put more than one and feel comfortable doing that. We'll give you a couple of seconds to process that.
Yeah, let me put it in chat as well so that
Okay, and then
if you're watching this after the fact, that you still get the question. And
okay,
okay, let's
all
see.
right. So I don't know. Do you see any answers popping up there, Dieter?
Before the flight and turbulence are the two. Oh, there's an E as well. So so the first three answers are quite, everybody is picking their own
Yeah.
biggest trigger.
Yeah, and most of it we're talking about probably anticipatory anxiety. So and the reason we're doing this, we're gonna prep you for going through basically what the basics are, some of the enhancements or the features on our flap survey, our new flap survey that some of you have taken, and because this month's monthly group coaching webinar is going to be in detail. You're going to get a chance to take the flap, and you're going to get a chance to come in, and it's going to be free. Dieter suggested, he said, I think we need to get everybody out there, as many people as we can. So this month's live group coaching session on Thursday, April 23rd,
23rd. Yeah.
6:30 p.m.
23rd.
23rd, right?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. April 23rd, 6:30 p.m. Pacific, 9:30 p.m. Eastern. Okay. Second question. What does your anxiety feel like? Is it racing thoughts, what ifs, or, and because that's what happens. Some people start thinking. It's more of a cognitive type alert. Physical sensations, that's more of an emotional or a physiological one. Feeling out of control or fear of panic. Again, pick one or more of those sensations down there, and hopefully you'll have a better sense of what these things mean when it comes to our new flap survey.
All right, I'm
Okay.
getting racing thoughts, what ifs. I get that twice. And that's actually interesting, that feeling of feeling out of control.
Yeah.
So
Yep. That's a
which makes a
fundamental
lot of
problem
sense.
for
That
people
makes
there.
a lot of sense.
Okay, third question. Does your anxiety change? And we haven't focused on this all that much. Is it always the same? Or does it depend on the situation? Does it, and you might even put a note in there if it depends on the situation, what would change it? Is it because you're taking a family vacation, or you've had maybe a death in the family, sadly, or you're going to a funeral or something like that. So A, same every time. B, depends on the situation. C, changes during flight. That would be interesting. And D, never thought about it. So you don't think about it. It's you know it's going to be there. So take some time, pick one of those. Okay. Number 4, when does anxiety begin? And this is more, you can see the anticipatory. Weeks before, days before, the day of the flight, or only when you get on the plane. This is one of the things that surprised me. Not everybody, most everybody has some sort of anticipatory anxiety, but there are people who have either this is the way it's always been for them, or they can work, they've gotten themselves to a point where it's now mostly when they get on the airplane, which of course is a little bit different than if you're plagued with it 6 weeks in advance when you start thinking of booking a flight. So
we got weeks before and days before.
Okay. So again, it shows the prevalence of anticipatory anxiety that we see a lot. 5, how do you feel when the door closes? Okay, totally fine. A. B, slightly uncomfortable. C, very anxious. And D, that's the hardest moment. And we could have put in there when you're ready for takeoff, or something like that, or when they begin boarding. Obviously, this is a reference to whether or not your anxiety has more to do with anticipation.
Okay, I got one answer here that says very anxious.
So. Yeah. Yep. And then the last one, do you see a pattern? Yes, I know my triggers. So this is where we start typically in Fearless Flight. We try to get people to say, what bothers you when you fly? I don't like it when they close the door. I don't like it when I think about takeoff, things like that. So knowing your triggers is a significant accomplishment for most fearful flyers. So do you see a pattern? A, yes, I know my triggers. B, somewhat. C, not really. And D, didn't know that was a thing. Okay. And that's why if you're down in the D area, that's why a lot of you just are totally overwhelmed when you even think about flying or getting on an airplane, because you don't know where to start, and it seems very, very abstract. Okay. All right, Dieter, let's get into this. Let's talk about the flap itself. And if you can maybe find that, Dieter, pull up a copy of a report, and we'll give people a little bit of a visual on that. So the first thing is, what is FLAP? Well, it stands for Flight Anxiety Profile. And we've branded it. And it's not a diagnosis. That's the most important thing that we want you to know. It is, however, a way to understand how your fear shows up. When you understand your fear, you stop blaming yourselves and you start making some real progress. And that's the key, because the thing, one of the things that has been most surprising to me over the 39 years I've been doing this, is the fact that the first thing that I usually help people do is get over blaming themselves. Lots of shame, lots of embarrassment associated with this. Okay, and why understanding what's going on matters, because your fear lives in your emotional brain, and you've heard us talk about an elephant and a rider brain. The elephant is the emotional, intuitive, quick acting, effortless part, and we just go there, and that part of our brain makes about 95% of the decisions when we take in information every day. So it has a massive role in what your affect is, and how you view life and the stories that you tell yourself. And because it is so prevalent in that, it's not logical. So it's not solved by logic, which is what we talk about, the rider brain. So we teach people how to change the way they look at fear by giving them this model for the elephant and the rider. And most of you know, you tell me and Dieter, the flying is, you already know flying safe. You can look at the newspapers every day. But the fear you have, and you explain to me, isn't logical. It's emotional, and it uses the body's mechanism, that is our physiology, to remind us. So it becomes very physical, and that's why advice like just relax doesn't work. You've got to do some stating or talking about it. So
Yeah,
what you do?
that's
Go ahead,
that image that no, I just wanted to kind of like drive that home, because that's an image that we often show. It's the rider on top of the elephant,
Yeah,
and like, you can't think it away. It's like, well, I hope you go the right way. I hope you go the right way. That's hoping and wishing is not gonna
exactly.
help me to do it. The relationship, however, between our rider and our elephant, especially establishing it when we're so caught up and identified in one of them, that is the key. But like Ron said, that is a process of really um getting off the blame train, so to speak, and starting to really look at like what it is that you might need, right? But what can help you? And so the flight anxiety profile survey is exactly about that. It's not even questions that we're asking you. We're asking you how you relate to 40, I think it's 41
Yeah, 40 statements.
statements.
Yep.
Yeah,
And they're
statements.
rated 1 through 10. And you rate, what you rate is short statements that we, in cooperation with ChatGPT, using AI, we took some established principles from the EMDR, the eye movement desensitization and reprocessing tool. And while we firmly believe in using EMDR, if that's appropriate for you, but what we found is more people than not, they want to get into the meat of it. They don't want to commit to a long-term therapy. And our experience is many of you, I'd say a majority of you, can get better in a very short period of time. And this was our way to abbreviate getting started in the process and putting you more in charge. So what you do is you rate these short statements about your thoughts, feelings, and reactions, the stories you tell yourselves, and no answers except just your honest answers. And we use a Likert scale, so you put yourself along that scale. And while there's 40 statements, they are pretty easy. The average person only takes about 5 minutes to complete it. And what you get when you're done with that, you get a personalized report, and something called a radar chart. And I because of my surgery this afternoon, I didn't get some of the charts up that I wanted. But nonetheless, you're going to see all this in action on the 23rd of this month if you come to the free live monthly group coaching webinar.
Actually, Ron,
So anyway,
we can actually share like a sample report
absolutely,
and kind of
absolutely.
like walk through it. So let me just make sure. Okay.
And I'll push through this while Dieter's doing that. Fear has patterns, and what we've just come up with, Dieter very, very astutely worked with the ChatGPT and came up with a profile that's really quite impressive. It rivals some of the personality inventories that I've used when I was training pilots during my aviation career. And it has 8 different styles that we've identified, and most people are a blend, right? It's not all of just one thing for somebody. And what changes when you do this? You find relief. Most people have reported, and we've beta tested this on some people who have been clients and are down the road and are flying with greater comfort and ease. And what was really cool is to get them to take it and say, yeah, that pretty much describes me and the process I went through. So you get relief, clarity, and direction, which are the 3 most important things that people have asked me over the years. What is this all about? Where do I start and where do I go? The next step, and we'll offer this option. I think we can put a link in there safely because you'll be ahead of the game if you come to the Thursday group. We're hoping that you will have taken and you have your report in front of you, which we'll bring up here and talk about in just a minute. So it's a free survey, and it'll help you get more confidence about yourself and about the process. And so let's just take a minute then, Dieter, if you want to share your screen, or I'm looking at mine. See,
Yeah,
can
I'm sharing already. So
oh, okay, cool. Yeah. So
basically what you're getting is a color-coded report. So because each of these types, 8 of the types, like Ron said, corresponds to a color that that then kind of helps you identify where you are landing on this map. And like Ron said, it's not so much to diagnose you, it's really to give you a lens through which you can understand your patterns better. Because if Ron, you'd like to say that if you know better, then you do better. And I think
absolutely. I stole that from Oprah, who stole it from the poet Maya Angelou. And on the cover sheet there that Dieter was just showing you, you can see each one of those little graphics. Dieter figured out he came up with an individual icon for each flap type. So it's really well done, if I do say so myself. But Dieter had a large part of the behind the scenes working here. So here's the things you get in the report. You get an introduction that talks about the report, talks about you. You get an overview, it tells you what's inside. You get a radar chart, which is I'm not going to worry much about the radar chart tonight. It'll come up here in a minute. We're going to talk more in detail about each one of these. You get something called a flight anxiety activation index. You get a main flap type, and you get some supporting types. And because as we said, nobody or rarely is anybody one of the 8 particular profile types. So you're a combination of the two, and depending on your responses, it will score you and it will tell you what your primary is, and then secondary, and then a tertiary if you have a third one. And it'll talk about supporting types and all that. And here is the thing about the radar chart. Imagine this, we don't have a circle around it, but imagine on each of these dimensions, anticipatory warriors at the top, crash catastrophizer at the bottom. So imagine a line going from the top to the bottom as a continuum. So depending on where you score on that, you would be along that line, somewhere between anticipatory warrior and crash catastrophizer. And each one of those 40 responses will plot out there so that you can see this becomes kind of an irregular figure. And on some of the radar charts, you'll see it more clustered over toward the escape strategist, for example, or maybe over towards backseat pilot. And those are particular styles and profiles that then we can steer you down certain roads to recovery. So it's much more well-defined and targeted.
And just to kind of like, because if you're looking at this for the first time, so you can see the turbulence translator and the escape strategies are scoring the highest on this radar chart. So basically, it's a very much an in the moment kind of fear, right? Turbulence happens, you want to get out, but it's very different from somebody who is a somatic storyteller who is already kind of like, having that anticipatory thing going days and weeks ahead of time. So, and knowing your style is really important for how you actually prepare for your flight so that you can be successful. So I just want to point that out. Why this radar chart is even in there in the first place.
And to add to what Dieter said, it goes back to the fact that this isn't a diagnosis, this is a lens. And that's a term that Dieter came up with, and it's very accurate. It allows you to look at the profile that comes up for you and to look through that behavior, and you say, oh yeah, that makes sense that I would, if that were my profile, if those were the things that I worry about, it would make sense that I would behave and think like this. So you get some insight as to how you can change the way you think about that. So you'll come up with a main flight anxiety type, and then it goes through the 8 anxiety types, each of the profiles, and then each one of these has just a bullet point type just explanation here. And this one here is for the person that showed this. This shows where they scored in there, and the scoring and all that will be explained in the profile itself.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and then we have also supporting types, and because as much as we say it's a lens or a mirror, nobody likes to be pigeonholed. I know I don't. And we're a lot more complicated than what meets the eye. So we wanted to kind of reflect that in our report. And so we have a main type, but then we also added 2 supporting types just to help create a more
complex picture of who you are.
Holistic overview of what you might be experiencing. And we did, Ron mentioned earlier, we did a beta study group. We had over 60 people that took our flight anxiety profile survey, and then we invited them to come on to a webinar, and we kind of worked through the experience. And one of the things that definitely struck us is just how well it seemed to capture people's experience, which is
the feedback we got was tremendous.
Yeah.
And so we'll just kind of flip through this, and then we'll go back to So here again here's a second supporting type. So this person has a primary, and then and then 2 supporting types, which help give a truer picture and a more complex lens. Ironically, that's what I got done today with my eyes. I got a new lens so I can see better. So this is your way to view yourself and your thoughts, your feelings, and your behavior, and hopefully make some sense. And we have already, as a part of this, we've already been analyzing our tools that we have, everything from distance self-talk to the flight harmonizer, and some of the tools that you've become that you have begun to identify us with here, and come up with protocols for where these specific types should start in their journey to overcome their fear of flying. So it's going to help people self-direct a lot more, which is one of our goals. We wanted to give people a way to self-diagnose a little bit more, or self-analyze themselves.
The other thing I want to point out, Ron, because so we have those 8 types, right? But then we also have what we call our orientation profile map, which basically kind of adds another dimension to this entire survey. And you can see here there is an internal versus external. There's emotion versus cognition. Are you emotionally driven? Are your feelings going to take over, or are you someone who is very much tightly controlled and has everything kind of planned out? It's really important, because one of the things that we got as feedback is, oh my God, I'm not wrong all the time. I just didn't know how to support myself. And that is one of the things that your orientation profile will help.
And those profile questions that we put up at the beginning were based on this. Those are the types of questions those are the types of evaluations that you're going to receive as a part of this profile. It's going to give you data to support the way that you probably answered some of the profiles up front.
Right.
Profiles.
Each report will have personalized recommendations. And for those of you who are watching that, they're not sales pitches. They are genuinely things that you can do without ever talking with us. They'll help you, dive deeper into what's actually going to move the needle for you. But if you do want to connect with us and dive deeper with what we have to offer, we obviously have some helpful support there for you as well. And then you also get a personalized closing reflection that will help you hopefully to take the next step. And like I said, the next monthly group coaching webinar, which is on April 23rd, we actually make it available to you for free because we want you ideally to take the flight anxiety profile survey first and then join us on the webinar, and we're gonna go on a deep dive and hopefully have some hot seats to really get some nuanced insight into what that report can do for you.
And if you've already registered and paid for this month's, we have something special for you. So just hang in there and you'll hear from us. We'll have some special options for you. Okay. So, and thanks for your trust and whatnot. Okay. What I want to do now is switch to just the last thing for the evening. I want to talk about.
Well, I'll just quickly answer a question here. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I put the question was where can you take the survey, and I put the survey link in chat.
Okay.
But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pin it so it'll be the first
in the chat.
So yeah.
Okay, cool. And maybe put the link to register as the second one.
Yeah, got that too.
If that's possible. Okay. All right. So I've been busy, of course, planning my week, because this weekend on Thursday I'll be going over to the Valencia area in the Los Angeles area, because we've got our weekly. We've got our Clear for Takeoff 101 in-person class, the LA edition, over at the Air Hollywood Studios this Saturday from 10 o'clock a.m. to 1 o'clock p.m. And I'm excited. We got a number of people signed up already. There's still room if you'd like to sign up. We'd love to have you. It's always fun. I've never had anybody say that they regretted coming. It's interesting. It's fun to look around the inside of a movie studio, if nothing else. But it's got a very realistic environment, starting with the boarding area and then the mock-up that we go on. And we try to shake you up just a little bit. We try to get your nerves going a little bit, because it's hard when you're not actually on an airplane sometime. But at any rate, getting ready for that. And of all things happened yesterday in Phoenix, we had an airplane. I was going to show a picture. We had an airplane. It's a vintage airplane. It's a seaplane. It only has 2 pilots in it. It goes, they only produced 1,000 of them, so it's kind of rare. And there's some, particular challenges with vintage airplanes, in that they're not on the production line anymore. So sometimes it's hard to get parts and things, we don't know what went wrong, but what went right is the pilot was able to land the thing on 7th Avenue in Phoenix. Oh my gosh. If that is one of the most highly used thoroughfares during rush hour here, and it happened to be a Sunday, and nobody was injured. Nobody in the airplane, it damaged the airplane because the left wing hit a utility pole, which is a small price to pay, consider what the options or what the possibilities were. But nobody was hurt on the ground or in the airplane, and they came to a halt. And of course, that generates a lot of news locally. And I got numerous calls from the various TV stations here, and it was still in the news today. And so what it raises, of course, and you probably know this and have experienced it, when you see that one, now you start noticing other airplane crashes, and these are all in the general aviation category. So this was a small airplane that crashed. It brought up some others about others. And what happens is it appeals to the basic function of our higher consciousness, and that is our brains start to look for patterns to protect us. Clusters of new stories can create the illusion that there's an increased danger out there. And this is all this is perception versus reality. And so I thought I'd just talk about this briefly. And you could probably go to 12news.com. That's the NBC affiliate here. I haven't heard yet when the story is going to be on there, but they're going to put my interview on there, I believe. Anyway, so we thought we'd just talk about that. And why does it feel scarier than it is? It's because when we look for patterns out there and we see these clusters, it triggers our perception and makes our mind go wild. And the thing to remember on this is general aviation versus commercial flights. One of the questions that the reporter asked me, he says, should we be worried? Well, the first thing is every airplane crash is unique, no matter whether it's a group of small airplanes or it's a group of airliners. And the one thing that's common in the United States here is the National Transportation Safety Board investigates fully both kinds. And their charter, their mission is to determine what happened to the best of their degree. I've talked about this before. The popularity of this various CSI shows on TV is phenomenal. When you learn all this behind the scenes forensic science and how they can figure things out when otherwise it would seem to be completely obscured from the mind. Well, aviation's been like that for a long time. We used to joke when I was in the military that, no matter what happened, if you crashed and there wasn't anything left of you, they'd still be able to determine what you had for breakfast and how early you got up in the morning, because it's just about that complete. In any case, the NTSB is charged with that responsibility. They can only determine what's wrong. They cannot order any changes, but they do come up with recommendations. And not only do they come up with recommendations and fixes based on what actually happened, oftentimes they'll come up with collateral things that they've learned that had no role in this particular incident or accident, but it might extend to other operations. That's what happened with Sully. I think there were 35 findings, 30 of which had little to do with Sully's landing in the Hudson and had to do with future airplanes that might have that same outcome and how to better evacuate the airplane. I remember that was one of them. Small airplanes operate under different rules. That's not to say that it's more dangerous. It's just different. They have layers of protection and layers of redundancy, just like big airplanes, but they don't have the same rigorous maintenance programs, for example, or same rigorous training. You do have to pass standards to get your licenses. You do have to meet the medical requirements to get a valid medical certificate. But once you get your license, you don't have the threat of someone looking over you to possibly jump on your jump seat at any time randomly, or regular training and evaluations every 6 months to a year, as airline pilots do. And so that is what distinguishes commercial airlines. And even I'm not going to pretend that or try to portend that flying in small airplanes is incredibly dangerous in and of itself, but it does tend to have higher accidents and incident rates than commercial airliners. So it pays sense. I have people ask me, "Hey, I've got a neighbor down the street that is a private pilot and is willing to take me up to help me with my fear." I tell them to, nothing against their neighbor because I don't know their neighbor, but I tell them to exercise discretion. And if they really are serious about that, let's have a discussion about that, because oftentimes people who can afford to fly light airplanes don't have as much time to train and stay current on them. And tragically, that's resulted in a lot of accidents over the years. And they end up being susceptible to things that like motor vehicle operators operating under the influence of alcohol and drugs. Who would have thunk? But it happens. And so they do have different rules. But the main thing is that there's a distinction between the rules that general aviation operates by versus commercial flights. The recent incidents, the one common theme in these four was something happened to the engine or resulting in a power loss. And the only thing they could do, if you have one engine and that one quits or falters, you're going down. And so if you have the luxury of being out over an open space with some altitude, you can plan to spot a place on the ground that is free of obstructions, or at least as free as you can find, and you can oftentimes make a successful and safe landing. Probably the airplane is going to be damaged, but you're going to be able to walk away. And ironically, the one on yesterday or on Sunday, and this one that happened a couple of weeks ago, both pilots were able to make lemonade out of some very, very, very sour lemons. The one that landed in 7th Street, of course, he landed with his passenger, and they were able to walk away from that. And believe it or not, you wouldn't believe this other one. They caught the other one on a security camera just before it ended up in a housing area. And they had a number of pictures there, and there were 3 people on the ground that were injured slightly, and the 2 pilots on board the airplane actually they were taken to the hospital, but they survived. I mean, literally, that thing came to a stop from one roof, skipped to another, and it stopped there. So we do practice the most fundamental part of my basic training was flying in a single engine airplane, a little bug smasher as we called them, and you'd be minding your own business, getting ready to go to return to the traffic pattern, and the instructor would catch you off guard, and he'd pull the throttle back and say you just lost your engine, and then that would start us with that process. But the main difference, of course, is you can't buy a ticket on an airliner with only one engine. It's got to have at least two or more. So, training is these 2 pilots were training. So for whatever happened, they ended up in a situation where they were in the pattern, low altitude, but not close enough to make it back to the runway. And training is the key for a lot of these, certainly for recovering from emergencies and preparing yourself in the event that you are in a light airplane. It takes quick decision making and experience, and that is how we save lives. And you elevate your confidence and safety through training, and that's what keeps aviation as safe as it is. You hear more about these incidents like this. If these were happening out in the middle of Kansas or the plains of Colorado and Oklahoma or Texas, you don't hear as much about that typically. But what's happened is the airports, particularly in Arizona, one of the things he asked me about and we got into was Arizona is an area if think about it, if you're going to teach people how to fly airplanes and you're going to start 60, 70, 80 years ago, when the airplanes were not near as reliable as they are today, where are you going to put knuckleheads like me? You're going to put us out in the middle of nowhere where if something goes wrong, we're less likely to hurt somebody. And so that has what happened traditionally. And now, because we have a much greater population in the US, even these small, formerly remote airports have been surrounded by humanity. And so there's more people that see them. And you know the story with personal video recording devices. We get everybody gets a view of things now. And in fact, this one, they went to a neighbor across the street who had a security camera, and they saw the last moments before impact with his security. So again, visibility has increased literally, and it's also increased in terms of the social media and the ability for us to gather information. That's why you hear more about it. And while the visibility has increased, the risk hasn't necessarily gone up, even with light airplanes. It's just that you're more likely to hear about it. And so you got to reframe the fear, just like you have to reframe your fear in overcoming flight anxiety. Not all flying's the same. And again, I want to the relevance, I think, to you all is commercial aviation has multiple layers of protection, and you need to focus on the facts and not headlines. What do you do to calm? Breathe in for 4 seconds, exhale for 6. If you can't remember that, start breathing and notice how long you inhale and then double the exhale. And that's the simplest way to bring your anxiety and your physiology down in a more comfortable level. Label your thoughts. This is anxiety. It's not danger. And use logical counter statements, which are the key to helping you reframe situations. So, final thought, just because you may hear more about accidents like this, general aviation accidents, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not as safe. In fact, if it's a light airplane, it has very little to do with commercial aviation. It's just your mind trying to protect you, and understanding helps reduce fear. That's why our Fearless Flight model is to first educate yourself, learn more about yourself, learn more about fear, and learn more about airplanes and flying. And with that, it's another strategy, or a corresponding strategy, is to learn how to disrupt and distract your thinking, because the difference between you and I sitting on an airplane is what we're thinking about. I'm thinking about what I'm going to eat. You're thinking about they closed the door and I can't get out of here. So we have tools like the Fearless Flight Harmonizer that have been very helpful, and we're coming out with a whole new line in our new launch of audio programs that have the same technology in the recordings as the Flight Harmonizer. So you can look forward to that down the road. And the last thing, of course, is keep coming back here, stay in the community, or some community, talk to others, talk to people who get you and are traveling on the same path with you, and maybe a little ahead of you, and just keep supporting each other. So,
all right. Well, there were a couple of questions, and I wanted to just address the one about Air Hollywood. So the class is on April 18th. It's from 10 to 1 o'clock. It's in an aviation themed movie studio. So what that will look like is that you basically will walk through a mock TSA. You will literally experience what you would experience in an airport without that anxiety of having to actually go through it all. And you'll sit in one of those fuselages, just like you would in a real airplane. Promise, we're not taking off. Although
Dita's referring, I had a lady one year, bless her heart, she came in, she said, "Now you're not going to move this thing, are you?" I said, "If we are able to get this thing airborne, the airlines are wasting a lot of money on airplanes."
That's right.
And even before you get to the mock-up of the cabin, you go through the boarding process. We have a full mock-up of security, the waiting area, the gate, and even a faux jetway. So probably the most often feedback we get is, "Oh man, when I came in and I saw the waiting area, it flipped my trigger." So
that's exactly what we're after, to actually activate these patterns in a safe environment with a nurturing support that allows you to rewrite these patterns in a way that it's just not possible as easily otherwise. And that's the beauty of being at Hollywood. Like, honestly, if we could, we would do that all over the country. Unfortunately, at this point, we cannot.
It's second only to getting on an airplane. And
exactly.
So get to Phoenix or LA. This is a great opportunity. We Talat Captain, who owns Air Hollywood, he does this. He supports us and on a Saturday, and it's just a phenomenal gift to be able to do this. So come and join us if you any way you can. Okay. All right. So any questions or anything else, Dieter?
No, I think that was the most pressing question.
Okay. All right. So once again, thanks for joining us. Please think about if you're going to be in the LA area, coming over there. If you can come back every week here, and for sure, if you have the opportunity, going to be on us this time. It's going to be free to attend this month's live monthly group coaching session. So come back and we love talking to you. We love answering questions. So everybody have a great week. Thanks for showing up, and we'll see you again next week for another edition of Fearless Flight Live. Bye-bye.